Hi, I'm Erik Voss, and Game of Thrones is on the brink of the most epic battle sequence in TV history, the Battle of Winterfell. With this Next on Game of Thrones trailer revealing, once you brighten this stuff so that we can see anything, some super subtle clues about this coming night fight. And since this next episode is going to be so insane, I'm gonna break down this preview frame by frame for all the details that you might have missed, explain the battle strategy intricacies, how those battle intricacies will be thrown out the window, and who might not live to see the sunrise. Spoiler warning in case I accidentally predict anything you don't want to know. Let's take a look.
The most heroic thing we can do now is look the truth in the face.
Okay, this teaser opens with the Unsullied all lined up facing the darkness, but brightening up this shot in the upper left corner, two dragons are visible flying off. This is presumably Daenerys and Jon on Drogon and Rhaegal. Daenerys and Jon appear in the later shot overlooking the flanks on a nearby hill. Last episode, Jon told us that he's holding back the two dragons to surprise the Night King and Viserion when they come for Branch in the Godswood.
We need to be near him. Not too near or the Night King won't come. But close enough to pursue him when he does.
Dragonfire will stop him?
I don't know. No one's ever tried.
Jon is assuming that killing the Night King alone will domino the entire army of the dead, the way killing one White Walker officer dominoed all the white foot soldiers under that White Walker's command. But again, Jon does have a track record of knowing nothing, illustrated by Arya and Bran pointing out that we don't even know if Dragonfire will kill the Night King. It may require something else, for example, a cyclical return to the Night King's origin, pinning him to a weirwood tree and stabbing him through the heart with dragonglass. Among the Winterfell defenses are catapults and trebuchets, which we military history nerds are very insistent on reminding the world are not the same thing. There's also a shot of Samwell Tarly, the White Walker Slayer, watching the Unsullied marching out to formation. I assume Sam will join the defenses inside the castle walls. This episode will be directed by Miguel Sapochnik, director of the epic moments like Battle of the Bastards and Hard Home. He and his production team watched the Battle of Helms Deep from Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers, another nighttime defensive battle with heavy precipitation, toggling among various points of view to humanize this epic battle on a more personal scale. Helm's Deep was also fought in layers: the fortress battlements, the inner castle when those walls were breached, and then the further inner caverns where the more vulnerable people hid. In this case, the vulnerable are down in the Winterfell crypts. Varys, Gilly, young Sam, and that little northern girl whom Davos met, and she reminded him of Shireen Baratheon. We also know from a release photo that Tyrion Lannister will join them down there as well. But, as has been speculated before, these crypts might not be the safest place to be. The Night King resurrects the dead, of which there are plenty in these tombs. Even in the Stark ancestors' decomposed states, we have seen whites as bare skeletons before. In the books, Jon actually experiences a nightmare in which the tombs of the Winterfell crypts open up and the Stark kings of the past rise. So if this theorized threat from within comes to pass, it could be the source of Varys' concern, as well as Tyrion's. But let's move on to the second half of this teaser.
The Night King is coming.
The dead are already here.
Okay, Jon whispers,
The Night King is coming.
but since we haven't seen the Night King or Viserion in any of this footage for the Battle of Winterfell, it is possible that this is again a misdirect. Audio from another scene or another episode, and the Night King is actually somewhere else. Like, as many have speculated, the King could be landing in King's Landing, or my preferred theory, burning down the Citadel Library in Old Town, since Bran revealed that the Night King's true goal is to erase human history from Westeros. But still, there is a shot of Jon looking out in terror at something in this blizzard, since the White Walkers are using a winter storm to blind these soldiers in a literal fog of war. The Army of the Dead features plenty of freakish horrors, resurrected zombie bears and zombie giants. Maybe we'll see those legendary giant ice spiders that old Nan used to scare us with. And let's talk about the full Winterfell defenses. Comparing this to the battle map that we saw in episode 2, we know that the front line is made up of Dothraki cavalry. I assume Ser Jorah will be joining training them. Behind them is a line of trebuchets and catapults with fires lit, implying that they're going to be hurling flaming artillery at the army of the dead. Behind that is the grid of the unsullied infantry. On the far left flank are the Knights of the Vale, which will be led by Sir Brienne of Tarth, joined by Podrick and Jaime Lannister. And the entire right flank is made up of Stark soldiers. I'm calling them Stark soldiers because that battle map labels them with the Stark direwolf sigil, but this is really a combined coalition of whatever was remaining of the Stark soldiers, the wildlings, and the northern families like the Karstarks and the Manderleys who supported Jon after the Battle of Bastards. I assume this right flank could be under the command of Tormund, maybe Jon himself, though I could also see him sticking with Dany and the dragons to confront the Night King. Along the walls, a trench has been dug, filled with wooden pikes that they plan to set ablaze, a moat of fire, perhaps trying to thin the herd of wights down to just the White Walkers. The battlements are armed with archers commanded by Sir Davos, and dragonglass spiked logs to sweep across like the scythe that we saw along the wall in season 4. Inside the castle, the bear sigil of House Mormont is placed, suggesting that Lyanna Mormont and her small forces of House Mormont will guard the castle interior. We also know that Theon Greyjoy and a small band of Ironborn will guard the Godswood and Bran. The teaser actually shows Theon there with a flaming arrow knocked. Actually, this reminds me of a moment with Theon in this same location all the way back in the second episode of the series. Remember, Robb wanted to avenge Bran, and Theon backed him up.
Once it comes to that, you know I'll stand behind you.
Is there going to be a battle in the Godswood?
Now, Theon is fulfilling his promise to Robb to defend Bran, with an actual battle in the Godswood. Arya sprints through the halls of Winterfell, wounded on her head, perhaps fleeing some of these risen wights, if that theory's true, or some that might have just breached the walls. There's also a shot of Beric Dondarrion with his flaming sword, and the Hound with his new dragonglass axe, creeping around, perhaps seeking some sane inner threats. And there's a quick shot of a dragon in the blizzard, but brightening this image, it's clearly not the Night King on Viserion, it's Daenerys riding Drogon. Unsullied soldiers raise their spears, and their shields have been fused with dragonglass lining, and Jon unsheaths Longclaw, his Valyrian steel sword. There's a tree behind him, suggesting this could be in the Godswood, and Jon is confronting the Night King one-on-one. It's interesting to realize that all the Valyrian steel weapons that have been introduced on this series have found their way to this battle, where they're obviously so desperately needed. Longclaw with Jon, the Cat's Paw dagger with Arya, the Tarly family sword Heartsbane, given by Sam to Ser Jorah, Brienne's sword Oathkeeper, and Jaime's sword Widow's Wail. These two were forged from melting down Ned Stark's sword Ice, so now the twin swords are symbolically fused back together to re-invoke Ned Stark's spirit. Daenerys tells Jon,
The dead are already here.
perhaps evidence of the crypt resurrection theory that we talked about, but it could also be Daenerys finishing her argument with Jon from earlier. Like maybe Jon is defending his timing, which admittedly wasn't great, saying he wanted to reveal to Daenerys who he was before the dead arrived, and she's like, dude, the dead are already here. Remember, she did tell Sansa last episode that if anything, she was the one who felt manipulated by Jon to fight in his war. And maybe now she's accusing Jon of knowing who he really was the whole time, and using her firepower to vanquish his enemies so that he could claim to be the hero and claim the Iron Throne away from her. Last episode's noble moments with characters like Ser Jorah and Grey Worm put those two at the top of my death pool. I also don't feel too great about Jaime, Podrick, Tormund, or Shireen 2.0. Comment down below with which characters you think will die next episode. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EA Voss, and subscribe to New Rockstars for all of our Game of Thrones coverage. And again, springy wood tension, catapult, counterweight and sling, trebuchet, get it right.